As a reminder, the meeting's being recorded. So we just heard the record button go off there. And so the meeting is being recorded, and by participating in the meeting, you're agreeing to be recorded and acknowledging your consent. And pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law, we are meeting remotely. And we'll go ahead, and I think our first item of business here is to approve the minutes of March 8th, which... Okay, so we have a motion, second, and a second, and they're coming
via email, and they should be there just about now. They're at the bottom of that agenda, so when you get it, if you just scroll down, the minutes are right below that agenda.
Okay, got it. Thank you. All right, so we have, we'll give you a minute. So we had a motion to approve the minutes and give you a minute to take a look at them and then see if we'll have discussion.
Was there a second on that motion?
There was. Who seconded it? I didn't have my camera on.
Oh, Laura
did. Laura, okay. Great.
So then I think you have to call the roll, right?
Yeah, so just giving people a minute if they want to review them.
You're still in that mode, Linda, from leading the meeting last time. Good for you.
Well, I don't know. It would have been nice if I remembered that I led the meeting at this school committee meeting.
So does anyone have anything that they'd like to note from the minutes? No? Okay, so we'll go ahead and take a vote on the approval of the minutes. And we'll go Member Bennett.
Bennett, yes.
Okay. Haber?
Haber, yes.
Imber?
Imber, yes.
Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Longbeliel?
Longbeliel, yes.
Shapiro? I think that's yes. We couldn't hear you, Deirdre.
I think there's an issue with our microphone.
Okay. It looks it's a yes. You can give us a thumbs up, and we'll take that as a yes.
Do you want to type in the chat?
Good idea. While she's doing that, I'll also vote yes, even though I wasn't there. I can still vote on the minutes, so I'll say yes. And Deirdre says, I don't know what, oh, we were voting on the minutes from March 8th. So she says yes. So yes to the minutes on March 8th. Okay. All right. So those are approved unanimously by the committee. Okay, so our goal tonight, welcome everyone. Hopefully you were able to get outside for a little bit today. Enjoy the sunshine. So we have two really important things that we need to do that are time sensitive tonight. So we're going to make sure our conversation is very focused and that we fit both of these items in. So the first item is those district indicators and benchmarks, which I know that's what you spoke about at length at the last meeting. What our goal tonight is after talking to management, we're going to give them 10 items, no more than 10 items, and let them, 10, yeah. Right, no more than 10. So we can have 2 or up to 10 items that we would give to them for them then to take from what other committees submit and take it to the full committee. So we've been talking a lot about this. I shared and Bob Burlow shared, and I think that Laura, you might have been an audience member. I think you might have been listening. I don't know if it was that meeting or another one. There was some meeting where you were an audience member, but we talked about, we shared what the committee has been doing here and that we're kind of different places with the strategic plan and having some of those items, and that we had some of those items that were the best of Boston or best of Massachusetts items too. And the committee seemed to see merit in both of those pathways. So we can mix and match our desires here, I think, in looking at those items that might fit in with the strategic plan, and then those items that might be more of those things like we were talking about in a previous meeting and you talked about last time, like MCAS scores or technology or those kinds of things as well. So we can go specific like that and broader based curriculum based items as well.
Did you freeze, Christina?
And Barlow.
Oh, Christina, I think you
Did
froze. Yeah, for a minute there. So we could go
Yeah, my
narrow, more broad-based, and then you
Yeah.
froze for maybe 30 seconds if you just
Oh
wanted.
gosh, those were the best 30 seconds of what I was saying. No, I was just saying if you would like to talk about what you put on the agenda here.
Sure. So management, where I take the minutes at those meetings, they had suggested that we try to come up with some categories and then what we might be able to send their way in terms of things that education subcommittee might focus on. And Laura Kirschenbaum had shared with me previously a study done by the Flippin group. And actually, when Brendan and I were discussing like how we might be able to categorize these, I kind of liked what they had put out there. So I'm under number 1 here, and it's 1A and 1B. But before we get to 1B, where the categories actually are, one of the things that Laura had mentioned to me that she had dove into and did was to unpack our vision and mission statement, and she looked for certain aspects of the traits that we were trying to find in students as well as in our schools. And what I liked about it, when I read through like the vision or the mission, they all fit into one of these 5 traits under the that the Flippin group came up with, as they're saying these are essential things to measure if you really want to improve schools. So I just wanted, that's why I included the vision and the mission from our strategic plan. I still feel kind of strongly that's a great way to anchor us, so we're just not off measuring everything under the sun, because we've told the community for the last 5 years, these statements are what we really deem as important traits for both our students and our teachers and our schools. So that's where I wanted to start maybe the conversation tonight, to see if we agreed that maybe we could have 5 categories. We could measure more than 5 things, but I wanted to see your thoughts around all that. And Laura, if you wanted to add anything to this, you're welcome to jump in here.
Thank you, Bob. I really did like the Flippin group's kind of succinct way of identifying the 5 different points on student, how do we measure our school performance, and more broadly, how do we measure the district performance? But and I like those categories, but I really felt that I really do think that our vision and our mission, regardless of what our strategic plan comes up with, that we will always be looking to go back to what is it we're trying to accomplish. And I think our mission and our vision really answer that question. Like, what are we trying to accomplish here? We have said it's our vision and our mission. And so I really, when I looked at what our vision and our mission statements said, I basically see three big ideas. I see academic success. We want our kids to be academically successful and productive. We want a social emotional well-being for both our students, most importantly for our students, but I would argue that for our staff as well. I mean, without one, you can't have the other, really. And research shows that the health of the community and the culture is really an indicator for that. And then community engagement. We want our kids, we want our community to be engaged with one another in a variety of ways. And so, we could look at MCAS data all day long, but it's only one measure of our success. It only measures one aspect of that. And so I think that if we were to kind of parse out indicators that look at that social emotional well-being, how do we know if we are hitting the mark with our programming, with our interventions, with our supports, with our work? How do we know if our students are engaged? How do we know if we have academic success? I think that those are questions that we need data for, right? We want to make data-driven decisions, and so I think that being able to do that will help us really make sure that we're measuring the achievement of our mission and our vision. Thank you, Bob.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Can we, I think what would be really helpful as we try to figure this out, I want to look at that agenda on the screen so people can be staring at it and maybe even writing on it, which I can do
Yep.
that. I just don't use Google Meet, I use Zoom. Do I do like my window, tab, or screen? What do I choose?
Let me talk you through it. So if you present now, you could present that tab. And then
Okay.
when you do tab, it's going to give you a list of what tabs you have open. You just choose the one that has the agenda on it.
All right.
And I
Like
think one of the powerful things here is everybody has the ability to write or to leave comments here that's in the group. So we could, while we're talking, if we're brainstorming and want to fit some things under something, we can certainly add to the agenda or just leave a comment off to the side.
Yeah, so so you can see the document right now, I think.
You're going to zoom in a little bit there, Christina.
How's that?
Maybe just a hair more for old man Burlow here.
Okay.
Old man
Oh.
Longbalil too.
Yeah, perfect. That's
So
much
right
better.
there? Okay.
Yep.
So I obviously can't see you all now, right? Unless
Yep.
I go like this. But now what happens when I do that? Anything? Or you can still see the document?
We can still see the document.
Okay. So I just flip back so I can see you for a minute.
Yep.
So if we think about, because I'm just trying to keep track of what we're saying. I know someone's taking minutes, but so these were the items, Bob, that you were talking about from the Flippin' group: the student achievement, discipline, attendance, graduation, and teacher satisfaction. When Laura was just talking, she mentioned parts of this: social, emotional well-being.
Yep.
The community, I think, was another factor, and there was something before that which I missed.
It was
But
around student achievement, how they perform academically in school, student success.
So if we took these items, could we add like a little subset under here? Would student achievement be? It sounds like some people from before that I see listing standardized test scores. Would that be just a category we could add under student achievement?
Bob wants to say something, but before he does, what I envisioned us doing tonight is just what we're beginning to do, is we would add some subsets under each of these, and then we could decide, do we have too many things we're measuring? Should we knock down the list a little bit? But I think, at least for me, the breakthrough I had was when Laura mentioned this to me, and then Brendan and I went and looked at it. It allowed me to gain entry and make some sense out of all these different types of things we could measure. Suddenly I was like, well, this is more important than that one. So that's the power, I think, of categorizing it a little bit. Bob, you had your hand up.
So I have no problem with these, but I think the issue becomes the granularity. And I would hope that what we really start to focus on is the granular aspects. And by that, I mean, to me, it was very helpful to have those profiles that are done by those 4 or 5 groups that you gave us links to, Bob. And when I went in there and sort of looked at how they were grading the school district, of course, all of these things come up, but the different metrics that they use between, for example, in almost all of them, the number of AP courses was a real problem for our district. In every single one of them, it was an issue. And I forget which one it was. I think it's Great Schools actually breaks it down by ethnicity. And trying to track those sorts of things is really good. We got very bad grades on our support for minority students. Minority students don't seem to be doing well in our district. And so that's the sort of thing. I mean, it's great that we look like a wonderful district in a broad brush. But the things that I think we should be measuring that actually fit into all of those areas, but that would have real meaning for our district is, in fact, do we seem to start to make a difference with, our minority students in terms of the number of AP courses, or in terms of their graduation rates, or in terms of the colleges that they're going to. And again, I think it was Great Schools that somehow or other got to the information about how many of our students were having to take a remedial class. I don't know how they got that information, but that would be really important. And I'm talking about at the collegiate level. Getting at that would be a really important metric, because it tells us, are we really succeeding? I mean, we have this grand vision, and that's fine. It's a typical grand vision. But the question is, when we drill down, are we really accomplishing it with our, aside from the AP issue, which is across the board, we do very poorly, both in terms of the percentage of students and the number of AP offerings. I mean, it turns out there are even AP offerings for drawing and for design that are under the arts. And I don't think we offer anything at the high school that goes to those sorts of things. So how we get at those smaller areas, I think, would be far more useful, because those are the areas where the district needs to grow over time. And if we're just doing broad brush stuff, we're looking at MCAS scores, we're going to look fine. I mean, we might see dips or something like that, or some specific area. Again, in terms of the number of, and we knew this was an issue, the number of students we have in the sciences for AP is very, very low compared to other districts. And so how we get at that smaller stuff will also help us in terms of how we're perceived by groups like U.S. News, or again, having a staffing plan so that we can deal with class size ratios and get our number down to comparable districts. We're at 14 something, and I think Northborough, Southborough's down around 12. And certainly we would get there, but the question is, how do we build in those things and then galvanize the towns with these sorts of metrics to say, these are issues for us. We can claim to be a very good district. We've got a B+ rating or something like that, but it's the devil's in the details, and that's the stuff where I really hope we don't just talk on a grand level, but we actually follow and track over 10 years or 20 years those specific areas that seem to be real weaknesses for us.
I agree with your statement, Bob, and I think that drawing the direct correlation between those grander statements that the community has affirmed to the assessment data that you're speaking of is an important piece, because when we ask for funding, when we ask for programmatic changes, when we ask for staffing to achieve those, we have to be able to make the case. And if we don't have that direct line, I feel that we're just, not making those connections explicit.
So Christina started to capture everyone's thoughts here so far. Who else wanted to speak? Linda, you've got your hand up. Why don't you jump in here, please?
Well, just quickly, I mean, it was interesting when I read through the flipping groups materials. They mentioned that the way to achieve these things is through school culture, and I know that's not the focus necessarily tonight, but I thought it was interesting, and we should talk about that at some point.
That's interesting that that's where they ended up saying that's where you're going to get the biggest change, and that's going to ensure that your meeting with success is starting there. When I first came to the district, that was one of the things that we did with the principal group, the leadership group, the central office, and the principals, is we started to read a book called School Culture Rewired, and that was our focus that very first year, was around that. And there even was some surveying of staff to see where we at, and that led us to adopting Panorama survey for students, because we were just surveying the adults, and they said, kids really probably, we should find out where they're at, because they probably can give us a lot more actionable items here. So that was thanks for bringing that up, Linda.
Not to dominate the conversation, because I feel like I've already said a lot, but I really do have an issue with that teacher satisfaction phrasing there. I actually would rather us look at teacher, staff, and student well-being rather than satisfaction. I think satisfaction is really not the real term that's going to get any traction there. But I think if we talk about well-being, we talk about stress, we talk about just overall workplace environment, culture, and so forth. I think that well-being statement probably hits it. But Brendan, I would defer to you on that if you agree or not.
I do agree. Yep. I think it's a more holistic way to look at it. I would say, and satisfaction is kind of a low bar. I mean, well-being is aiming a little higher. So I definitely agree.
So I added okay. Oh, go ahead, Krista. Go ahead. Sorry. Nope, go ahead.
So I just wanted to, bring back what I've been saying, for months, is that we should probably try to get the district or get our schools to be a little bit more trauma informed, which includes toxic stress for our kids, and the stress situation for the teachers there as well. I think that people kind of jump away when you say trauma-informed school district because they're worried that people are going to be jumping into their trauma, and that's not what it is. It is about finding solutions forward to help with the toxic stress. So any way to include any of that and everything that you're saying right here, school culture, learning environment, well-being, social emotional well-being for the educators and students, that is all definitely under the umbrella of our district becoming trauma-informed.
Krista, did you want to add something under the educators' social emotional well-being, or add to that social emotional line under educators? You can jump right in there if you'd like, or you could talk to Christina or me and we could add something in there.
I wouldn't know what to add there. I know the importance, but I wouldn't know what to add.
You're asking us to make sure we don't miss doing something. What would you like to have us put in here?
Well, I just think that all of that is under the same umbrella as becoming a trauma-informed district. So, so where it says, school culture,
okay.
You could say, becoming, trauma-informed.
Thank you.
I think one piece of data that that speaks to, kind of scratches the surface on well-being is attendance rates.
Yep.
As a piece of data, right? As student and staff attendance rates.
Yeah. So students' attendance rate, absolutely. I'd say that's something we could discuss publicly here. Nowhere in any public information that's released does it have staff attendance rates. So that would be something internally we certainly could look at. But seeing how this is going to sort of have a public side to it, I'd just caution us to be a little careful on what we actually put out here.
Before Deirdre goes to, part of what we had talked about in management was that I think Mike had said something about maybe human resources would be doing something like looking at exit data, and that would be where they could look at that kind of data, like attendance and seeing and whether issues. So Deirdre, what would you like to add?
Yeah, so my question was around the attendance rate. I did read that it's tied to our funding, which I understand, but I don't really understand how that's something that we can influence or control. If a kid is sick, a kid is sick, or I can understand dropout rates because that's a bigger indicator, but I'm not too sure exactly how attendant rates, just like how many times a kid comes to school or doesn't come to school, is something that is under our ability. And where we're talking about the social emotional and all of that, I agree that that's something that kids will want to come to school, you know, but can you elaborate a little bit more on attendance ratings and how that's something that, as an indicator here, it's something that we can change, influence, control? I don't understand that.
Sure. So suppose the principals come to us and we come to you and say, hey, we have a real problem with attendance. Kids are just, they get right up to 10 absences, and there's little power we have. And you say, all right, we're going to modify our attendance policy such that when they reach 7 absences, there'll be a formal letter that goes home. You could create a policy like that, which lends a little more teeth then to the people that are in the schools. You know, they're doing something formally at some benchmark that happens before it really becomes a huge problem. So there's one way that you could do it. You're right, Deidre. The way you guys would go about it is to look at it through a policy, or to ask us to report to you on things. And so if I said, oh, our attendance rate has dropped below a certain percentage, you're like, okay, we'd like you to address that and then report back to us, you know, in 3 months, and let us know where you're at with the things you put into play. You know, what's the plan you're going to do, Mr. Burlow, and report back to us on how it's working. So those are the avenues I see that the school committee could have here, is create a physical policy that gives people a little bit more power or teeth, or to ask us to report back what's our plan and then report back on the progress or lack thereof.
Brendan, what do you want to add? Thank you.
Just to add to what Bob was saying too, Deirdre, I think that's a really good point. I guess it would be looked at in context as the important piece. There's chronic attendance issues too, where they would hit a certain threshold. So when you look at it in the context of a school and how they're doing, it's another indicator of engagement or disengagement, and another indicator of culture. But you're right that it shouldn't just be looked at on its own, especially if there's a sickness going through the school. That shouldn't count against. That's just what we'd expect. So good point, though.
Linda, you got your hand up there.
Yes. Just really quickly, back to school culture for one moment. I'd like to just add embraces diversity.
Okay.
That's all.
When we're talking about discipline referrals,
Yes.
how would would that strictly be referrals to principals?
We report some discipline issues out publicly. And so maybe this is where I thought we need to use public information. We can't be saying we're going to record all this private information and we can't share out the details to you guys. Just say, no, we're getting better. The overall average for the district is this, when in fact, you know, it's something that's half the schools are struggling with, and maybe half the schools are excelling at. So what I thought, and there is a link down below on the agenda under part C, if we could go there to the school and district profiles, you could kind of see what kind of discipline information is actually shared out here. So Christina, do you want to drive us there? And now if you, this is...
Did I just do it? I thought I did.
Yes, you did, lady. I
right.
was lagging behind here just a little bit. So here's Wachusett as a district. We could go to the schools in a minute, but for discipline, it might be better to stay at the district level. If Christina clicks on students up there, we're on the tab that says general at the top. If you click on students, and Christina, you might have to blow this up just a little bit off to the left. Off to the left are all these different reports we can get in here. And this is all public information. Any taxpayer, any school committee member, any teacher, anyone can go look here. A student can go look here. So here's where we have things like student attendance, retention. There's also dropout rates, graduation rates, how mobile or a mobility rate, how much does our population move around. If we go down just a little further, there's student discipline. It's in the bottom third. You got it right there. And you see at the top, Christina, it's set on all of offenses. If you could just click on that down arrow, here's all the different things we could sort on. The little down arrow at the end of all offenses.
Oh, here.
Not that,
Oh, I was there. Was I not
Yep.
there? Like all these things.
It wasn't showing on my screen.
Oh, like where it says physical, fight, robbery.
Yep. All that stuff. I'm not seeing it.
Okay, it's showing up on mine. It says
Yep.
bullying, destruction. I might have to click on them for you to see. I'll choose bullying, and then it will. So I chose bullying. Do I hit the arrow to make it come up?
Arrow, yep. And it'll go sort for that. So what's unique is here's the state saying, here's all these different offenses that we can sort by. And then you see in Wachusett, where we were just a minute ago, had all sorts of numbers all the way across here. And so this is saying for the entire year, there was one bullying offense. This might rely on how we're reporting the data out to the Department of Education, as opposed to, wow, there's only one bullying across all 7,000 students in Wachusett. This is a challenge for us internally. It's also a challenge in how we report the data out. It might be that we're collecting this internally, but it's not getting reported out correctly on the public side. So even though there's a bunch of things in that drop down, we might not be able to catch every one of them. Christina, could you go back to the all offenses, the first choice there, and then hit your arrow over? Well, let's kind of take a look down here. So this is stuff we could report out on. This is stuff we can do it by school. The students that have been disciplined, the in-school suspension rate, the out-of-school suspension rate, the expulsions, alternative setting, etc. as we go across there, including arrests, all those types of things. So this is part of the public side. This is public information. So Sherry, to get back to your question on how exactly and what would we do, because some of this is very private information. Sometimes there's an event that happens and there's some things set into play and it's an agreement maybe based on the student and some of his or her handicap that we have, where we might say, look, if this happens again, this is what the consequence will be. So even though there was an initial bullying, maybe the student wasn't conceptually aware or that this is what the result of what they were saying was happening. So not everything does get reported. We have to be very careful in how we identify things as well. So, but all this is public. We can report out on any of these types of things.
So this is interesting too, and you guys might have gone over this at the last meeting, the grade 9 course passing, the advanced course completion that you guys had looked at. So just having this, this is here, I understand like pulling out some of it so we can look at it, but it is nice to have it somewhere for parents to be able to access, maybe with a little video too that says, this is like what you just did for us, saying, just go down here and you can see the attrition rates or mobility rate and all of this stuff. There's just lots of data available to people, but they need to know to be able to go there, like, and how to use that.
There really is. Christina, could you click on the last one at the top that says trends dart -dart? Yeah. So this is the tool they have set up. They automatically can pick some comparable districts and they use their own metrics to figure that out. We can also populate it with districts that we choose to have as our comps, but here's what they come up with for the comps. And then off to the side, or you can do any drop down, you can select other things to have them compare us with. This is just comparing MCAS. We could do enrollment, we could do student support, we could do any of those types of things. And as you go down, there's different things you could look at as well. So this tool actually has a lot of layers in it. You can see off to the side is annual dropout rates we can compare across all those schools. And it starts to paint a picture if you keep the same comps in there, the same comparable districts. So you can start to say, hey, we were below so-and-so here, but we're above them here. I wonder what they're doing differently. And that's how you can start to use some of this to answer those questions. The power of, I think, some of this stuff is, as Christina just said, it's already pulled out for us. We could certainly reference it. We could pull data from here and put it into our own front end and sort of have it available for people to see. But this is what the state has done for districts already.
All right. I'm going to stop sharing this, I think.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
And
Bob's got his hand, and then Linda and Laura.
Okay.
No,
So
I just forgot to put
I
mine
know
down.
that MCAS was going toward trying to ascertain growth for students, which is a good thing. I don't know how well they've succeeded at that, but again, one of the I forget which metric from the commercial ones also was looking at the difference between students and where they started and where they ended up. And that again seems to be something that would be far more powerful and useful if we can get at those. And again, it's not to reinvent the wheel and gather this data ourselves. I think if the state is providing this stuff, tying all of that in would be really useful, because the question is, are we succeeding? Are we getting better at, and even with subgroups, in terms of student growth? That's only good though if the indicator is any good. If the indicator is a lousy indicator, then it doesn't. Then the data is poor data, and trying to go by it isn't helpful. But so do Brendan? Do you or do Bob? Do you have any feelings about how the state's doing with that?
Brendan, you want to jump in first? We kind of talked a little bit today about that.
Yeah, and Bob Ember, I agree with you. So looking at how students are doing relatively to their own progress is actually an often overlooked indicator. And student growth percentile is what the state was using for MCAS to look at that. I think that is definitely in the right ballpark, because that really, it shows a few things. I mean, how students are doing compared to themselves, which is pretty important. But also, I think it's an indicator of how we're doing as far as instruction in a lot of ways, because it's showing what's occurring in school and whether that's having an impact. So, and there are ways that through even our tier 2 interventions that we're using Panorama Student Success, which is our portal for setting goals with students. We're starting to do a lot of that. We've been doing a lot of that work for a while, I should say, but we're getting more methodical about it. So I think that's a really important thing. And it's a different way of looking at data, rather than saying, we have this many students who are below a certain threshold. We're looking at how they're progressing. So I'm glad you brought that point up.
And Bob, the other thing is, you mentioned this earlier, Wachusett does very well if you just looked at raw MCAS scores. We kids, by and large, do very well. Their scores are high. The SGP, or Student Growth Percentile, looks at how well are all the students improving year to year to year. So just because maybe Brendan's a high achiever, if he's sort of not really improving much, his student growth is going to be relatively low. When we compared, and Brendan and I did this today, our SGP, our Student Growth Percentile as a district, to all those comps, we were second to the last, which means a lot of those comp districts, the kids are growing more than they are here. So that opens a whole bunch of different questions up suddenly. Maybe our raw scores, we're not second to the last out of that group, but in terms of how well we're growing year to year, there wasn't as much growth as the other districts had. So, I mean, that's, I think, an important thing to look at. So it's not just the raw score, which doesn't really tell you a heck of a lot. There's more action associated with the student growth percentile.
I mean, I really found sort of the great schools data collection, and again, I don't know how good it is, but they were asking very interesting questions, and they were categorizing, very finely. And I don't know exactly how they're doing it. And then the only other one that I thought was really good was the, actually a much cruder level, was the niche grade, because they give us a C in administration. I don't know what that's about, but probably we have just our funding for administration is low. Resources and facility is a C+, and again, my guess is it's that per pupil funding, but we might want to look at that. And again, that's the sort of thing that you can go back to the towns and say, look, we're at a C+ on this niche grade. Do you really want to be evaluated this way? And diversity, which is a much harder thing for us to deal with. And clubs and activities, we got to be. And clearly that may be an area where we really do need to expand our abilities. But by and large, I found the great schools data very interesting, because I mean, they really break it down in terms of lots of stuff, and in terms of lots of subgroups, and that may give us a start of where to be looking. So.
Absolutely, Bob. And I think that should be something that helps to inform our our staffing plan as well. Linda, you had your hand up there, lady, earlier.
No,
Yeah.
I forgot to take it down. That's all.
Oh, okay. Laura?
Yeah, thanks. I agree with Bob's assessment of the niche and the great schools data. It made me want to propose that we also look, once we've got our district indicators down, that we create perhaps some sort of a district dashboard of financial or state of the district information that compiles some of that information. And so, I mean, I don't want to divert us too much from what we're talking about here, but I think things like age of buildings, capacity of buildings, staff retention rates, transportation costs versus state reimbursement rates, and some other per pupil expenditures and things like that, I think could help maintain a communication platform for us to communicate to the district, so that community members can really see in more of a detailed way, sort of at the click of a button, what the state of the district is, and what we might be looking to plan for in terms of staffing, in terms of per pupils expenditures for budget, for building needs, and so forth. And I think that having some sort of a dashboard might be a direction that we want to go at some other later point. But I don't want to divert us away from what we're talking about here. I just would hope to capture that.
So in our list that Christina's been typing and other people have been typing in there, if I'm counting correctly here, Christina, if maybe we started up where student achievement is there, I'm just looking at how many different things. So you said somewhere 10 or less, and that's what they charged us with. So we have under student achievement, we have standardized test scores, and that could be a variety of them that are in there. That could include the student growth percentile broken out by subgroups. So there's two things, a score and the percentile. Analysis of subsets of students. So there's a third thing we're looking for. Discipline referrals would be 4. Under attendance rates, if you just kind of came down and went, yeah, I'm letting you catch up here. Yeah, attendance rates, yeah, we've got that. So there's 5. Graduation rates, what do we have under that there? Was there anything? Nothing. So there's the 1-year follow-up, that would be 6. And then under school culture there, I think we have 7, 8. We were looking at things for educators and things for students. So we're under 10. I mean, we're meeting that challenge of what we were handed from the management subcommittee. Bob, what do you want to say there?
Again, under those graduation rates, if you go to the great schools, under academics, they are looking at, they have graduates pursuing college or voc, graduates pursuing 4-year college, graduates pursuing 2-year, graduates needing remediation. And again, I'm really interested in sort of, that number. I mean, we do much better, it seems like, this than the state, but knowing, can we improve that? Graduates who return to college for a 2nd year, and those sorts of things I would want to be looking at under that broader category of graduation rates, because it's in those details that it's I think more useful. And the other thing I was thinking about is based on sort of some of the things that Krista was saying, is the flip side of that is, asking students, do they feel like they're being bullied? Do they feel like they're safe? Do they feel like they're being respected? And again, drilling down, particularly with minority groups, because it sounded to me from a whole bunch of meetings that we had that was really a significant issue for our district.
I think those are great points, Bob. Some of the data that you were mentioning about the 2-year and 4-year, we get that initial information and we can get that on DESE. And you guys, we probably looked at that the last meeting that I wasn't at. I don't know how those other groups get those follow-up data. That's something I remember us talking to Principal Biando about looking into doing that a couple years ago, and I don't think we got it off the ground. But that's something I think that is. If we want to really see, do we make a difference in kids' lives, we do need to do that. So at some point, at least attempt 2- and 4-year follow-ups with kids to see about their high school experiences and how they did. Your question about the bullying and their treatment, I think, I don't want to speak for Brendan, but I think that panorama in the surveys that you're doing about social emotional well-being, that's part of, you're asking kids about safe schools in that setting. Is that correct, Brendan?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So we are getting some of that, and I think that falls under that umbrella of the social emotional well-being. But I think that is so important, and also for the teachers. I don't know if Panorama has a teacher module or something to gather school culture information or other things but we'd want to know. It sounds like we're interested in. I'm interested. I think many of you are in educator well-being as well, because if our educators are well, then they help our children be well and promote that. So it's really important. So I'm sure the district has something or will be looking for something in the future for that.
And along those lines, even asking the simple question, are you getting the professional development that is useful to you and in the areas that you need, and how is the quality of it, are two really important questions that would, I think, be more substantive in terms of well-being. I'm not just looking for somebody to have a great day. That's nice, but the question is, as a district, are we educating the educators in a way that's meaningful? And
Yeah.
That would be a metric, I think, that would be really important to follow over time.
Yes, and I guess I'm a little different because I'm looking for both of those. So I think they're connected. And I just heard we just had a staff feedback presentation at my school. We used Panorama, but it was in November or December, and they were giving us feedback on professional development and our satisfaction. I don't remember answering the question, but there must have been something on there. But that was a question. It was like, how related is the PD to what you do in your classroom? How satisfied are you with that? Like those kind of questions where that was an interesting focus. And there were things about trust and those kinds of things as well. So I think it must have been, if we were getting that feedback, it must have been that the Panorama survey asked me about those things. I just don't remember because it was so long ago. Do we have, I think, Bob Burlow, what you were saying is that we have a pretty good list to share with management at this point for them to then, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
That's what I was concluding from our work we did this first hour of the meeting. Yeah, I feel this is a pretty focused list. Yeah.
And then I added that information that Bob and Laura were talking about, the niche and the great school sites, to see. There was discussion of the dashboard we've had, but I've heard that at management as well. And at some point in some meeting, the facilities has come up at different times. I think that's a great idea to share that. And I think the idea is that other committees will also take on indicators, and that's probably something. Laura, are you on that committee now, or am I making that up? Like the facilities?
I'm not in facilities right now. No.
Okay, so maybe who knows when we switch over what committees we'll be in, but if we're in May, so if any of you end up there, that might be a topic to bring up there if we haven't moved this along, because it's March. May is not too far away. But I think that's a great idea, so people know what we have building-wise. And age, and because like you said, they have to pay for it. We have to keep the upkeep going on these. Does anyone want to add anything? Bob, Imber?
Yes. The one other thing that I just having that conversation about sort of, the teachers and their well-being. I think the data used to show very clearly that locus of control was unbelievably important. And teachers needed to feel like they were able to influence what occurred in the school and in meaningful ways. And that was really sort of an essential quality to a healthy district. So if there's a way for us, again, and again, I don't know what's in the panorama, and if there's a way to get at those issues, but asking questions around, do you feel like what you say is important in this school, and are you being, do you have an ability to influence the quality and way that education occurs in your building and in the district? That would be, again, one of those sub metrics that would be a really powerful one, because it's just so important to one, I think, the health of the district, but also how teachers are feeling.
And just so everybody's aware, for us to use the teacher side of Panorama we have to pay more than what we're paying into them now for the student side to get that survey information out of there. So Brendan and I had talked and thrown around a few ideas around creating a locally created or in-house survey tool, and we could certainly add these aspects to it. And long term, we could look to just buy into that, but at this point, that's not something that's available to us to be able to access.
Might be a great thing for a grant.
Yes, you're right, Bob. And this is high water time for grants in my career. Holy cow.
There are also some free, I found a free one on like the U.S. Department of Education. They have free school culture surveys already available. And to Bob's, I mean, to your point, Bob Berlow, it's something easily that you could create easily, of course, something you create a survey that you can use and look at. And to Bob Imber, that was one of the questions, again, that I got feedback on today that we had responded to. So you're right on. It's like you wrote that Panorama survey that I must have taken a couple months ago. But I think those questions, that is true about the, it is about, like you said, locus of control. Like how much control do I have? And that greatly affects stress levels that people have. And someone had their hand up or wanted to talk. Was it Laura, maybe?
Laura and Linda, both.
Linda, okay.
So just quickly, I wanted to echo what Bob Imber had to say on collecting data on where our students go after high school. If we can do that as part of graduation rates, great. If not, I do think it's worth adding another indicator. I just think it's very important.
We've got it up there. It's 4B. It's under there.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Laura?
Thanks. I'm not sure if this is already identified through the 1B analysis through subsets of students, but I feel compelled to make it explicit that we would be looking at failure rates and honor roll percentage rates to look for trends, to assess the quality and rigor of our educational programming and what supports we have in place for students who are not meeting, grade level expectations and so forth. So I just feel like we had this in our presentation a while back that committee members were looking for failure rates, but I also would add honor roll rates, because if we have an exorbitant number of students in honor roll every semester, we might want to think about whether or not we're adding enough rigor to our programming for students. And then also my last point is I don't know if this falls under attendance rates or school culture, but club and extracurricular participation. I think that speaks to the variety of opportunities and whether or not students are feeling compelled to engage in them.
So one thing in my experience, the problem when you introduce grades is they're all over the place, basically. So some teachers in a grade level, some subjects, some schools might push to have more kids get A's and B's, and other ones they're more rigorous, and there's kids that get a variety of different grades, and there's not as many A's. So it's tough to have that as a metric that's out there because they're so subjective. That's one of the problems I have just with grades as a whole. I'm happy to leave it on there, but it is an extremely subjective way of changing things. And generally, I've found when I've tried to push back on grades, they just give a little different grade, a little. So, Bob, you wanted to follow up on that?
Well, I'm just wearing my teacher hat.
Sure.
And I think there's also a stylistic difference in terms of how folks teach. So just to give you an example, in my fourth grade class, if I taught something in math, if you got less than an 80, you would have to come back to me, and you have to be retaught, and you didn't even have a choice. If you got above an 80, you could retake the test if you wanted, and you could join the group, and I would count the highest grade. And there were some kids I saw 4 or 5 times, and I kept moving them up. And again, it goes to sort of that concept of growth. But you would say, oh, gee, Bob's got a lot of kids who are doing pretty well. It required a huge amount of effort, and sometimes on a regular basis popping into the after-school program, and again, giving them free time in their after-school program, and doing all those sorts of things to try to keep pushing them. So it is a really tricky metric in terms of sort of with a broad brush.
And so, Bob, in that example that you just gave us, we'd want to see if you were at a different level where there was honor roll, let's just say, we would want to see a lot of kids coming out of Bob's class in the honor roll because of the way he's going back and reteaching them and giving them multiple opportunities to demonstrate mastery. Another teacher might say, if they had high standards, let's say, of a grade and giving them just that one opportunity, you got less than an 80, sorry, that's it, we're moving on. And in that case, there would be far less on the honor roll, and that might actually be a problem then, as opposed to Bob having more kids on the honor roll because of the way he's attacking it. So that's just one of the things. When you start to unpack grades, it just becomes a very sticky thing to try to say, that's what we're going to measure progress on, because there's so many different interpretations of mastery, of getting kids to mastery, of allowing retests for full credit. I'm only going to let the highest grade you can get on the retest is a 75. There's all that sort of stuff. Late homework, all those types of things. So to me, I just wanted to bring that up. It doesn't mean we can't have that as one of the things on our list.
I hear what you said about making it a metric for district performance, but it sounds like it is a springboard for a whole host of conversations at grade levels and so forth. And so if you don't make it important in one way or another, then I'm concerned that conversation doesn't happen. And so maybe it's belong here, but maybe it belongs someplace else as a conversation point for professional development and so forth.
Yep, I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that, Laura.
Thanks.
Do we have Linda? And then we'll probably end our conversation so we can move on to our next topic. Linda, did you have something to add, or did I get that wrong?
Krista does too. She had
Krista. Okay, so Linda and Krista?
No, I'm all set. I just keep forgetting to put.
Oh, okay. Krista?
Yeah, so I just have a question. So Laura brought up extracurriculars and clubs and stuff, and how that's an indicator. And I was just wondering, I know that kids who are getting lower grades are not invited to do those extracurriculars and those clubs, even though those are areas that they might actually be doing better with and might actually encourage their grades to improve if they're having a good time at school. Where do we put that's a priority to not weigh grades in their participation for extracurriculars and clubs?
Christina found a great spot for it. Where'd you add that in? Or did you type it in, Christina?
I did. Under the well-being, I put students engagement clubs, extracurriculars, and athletics. But so Krista is just saying there might be instances. I'm not aware of this, but you must be, Krista, of a school where kids are kept out of being able to engage. I don't know how to respond to that.
Yes. Yeah. Discouraged from, very sad.
Yeah. So, I mean, if this is a personal thing or something you know of, I might make a call if it's affecting someone in your family to the principal and just say, can you explain this to me? I don't understand how this is helpful, and have that conversation, because I think many of us.
I know it sounds personal. It is a little personal, but I also know from experience that I was, that those conversations. This is policy. Yeah, this is, or maybe not policy, but this is what we do. So it's written.
When I think about this, if we're tracking percentage of kids in clubs and the number of clubs that a particular individual might be in, and we have some data around that, and we're tracking that over time, we then start, I would hope the district would start to ask serious questions about how do we move that forward? I mean, it's sort of like the questions that we were asking about science with AP, and all of a sudden you say, well, there's a problem here. And then the question is, so now how are you going to address that so that we see this changing over time, because we value the fact that kids are participating in extracurricular because it's a really important extension of what good schools do. So, I think that would help, at least in the conversation. In the short term, I'd advocate anyone whose kid is being denied an ability to join a club to talk with the principal first and then go right to the superintendent.
Exactly.
I think it's,
Yeah, we talked before.
Really important.
Yeah, and Bob, I know other meetings we've had, Bob Imber, we've talked about how the extracurriculars are part of the curriculum. So definitely follow up with that, Krista, and anyone else. And I know Bob's listening here going, I think you're interested in this question, and Brendan as well. So
yeah, there are pieces of the curriculum that aren't available to children who are getting lower grades in certain subjects. So that's also, in my opinion, super problematic, as they would be maybe good at the things that they're being denied based on something completely different. Looking at that, I don't know where that goes, but I'm sure that that's discouraging some of our students from proceeding or feeling, accomplished or actually accomplishing things.
Or part of the school, part of the culture,
yes.
part of the,
yes,
the
exactly.
This is huge. I did see that Alicia posted something in the chat about, which I could see this component about maybe not being able to participate because of academic reasons in high school sports. But I think we all recognize that's a
reality.
Yeah, that's the only thing I just because at the high school, I mean, I run the Island of Misfit clubs. I used to run the Lady Gaga club, and nobody was ever excluded from it. But the only thing I can think of that I've ever heard of is like kids not being able to play sports, but that's because of MIAA rules. That's not district policy.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for saying that. Okay, interesting. All right, so I think I'm going to stop sharing this tab at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I can go back to seeing you all. So thank you for that. That was a long couple of months or longer coming up with those indicators. I'm happy we'll be able to bring those to management and see what they'll do from that point. The next topic that they charged us with, I always feel like education, we know being on education, this happens to us. Education will take this up. They rarely say facilities will take this up, but it seems like we're that go-to committee. And they gave us I'm going to say a challenging one for tonight, and it is MCAS. And let's look. I got to find the agenda here.
So it's under new business.
I shouldn't have stopped sharing, right?
4, and it's letter B under that.
Okay. I shouldn't have stopped sharing. It was too soon. So let me put it back on. Bless you. I'm going to go to a tab, and here we are. I know those spring allergies are.
That tree pollen, it's starting to get to me already.
Yes, me too today. I was sore throat, but hopefully we'll be able to all weather through. So under our new business, thank you for directing me to where we have. We're gonna, if it's okay with everyone, if we could go to letter B instead of A, just because we have been asked to do letter B. Is there anyone who objects to doing that? Okay, so we'll go to B. And this came up in the meeting. Whenever the last management meeting was, Ken Mills brought up that MASC had sent something out to members about them supporting this bill, which is HD 1448, which was asking for essentially it seemed like a moratorium for MCAS testing for this year, not in the long term, but just for the year. And then we were asked to take a look at what do we think the Wachusett position should be, the Wachusett School Committee, on MCAS for this year. There isn't a MASC model resolution that I'm aware of, just the idea that they wanted us to contact our legislators, and if we wanted to have a resolution, we would need to type something up to put something together, or just say we're supporting a position and then send it off. There was a MASC has a position counter position document, which is number 4 there, that you probably looked at. But essentially, we have to get at the question first: is do we think, as a committee, is it the role of the school committee to make a recommendation on MCAS for this school year? So I don't know if did I get that, Bob Berlow, before we start discussion? Is that kind of the idea?
Nice
So
job
maybe,
on that
yeah.
longer conversation from that group.
So maybe we'll go around and just kind of let everyone do, just for time's sake, because it's 7 o'clock, we'll have everyone maybe do like 2 minutes just of what do you think, or you can skip. But just, do you think it is our position to take a position on MCAS for this school year? And then if we get to the yes, yes, no, then we can talk about what that position might be and the pros and cons of those positions. So I don't know if we're all in the same order. I don't know if this is like Google. I mean, if this is like Zoom where we're not in the same order. I don't know.
We're not in the same order.
Okay, we're all like seeing different things here.
Oh, yeah, so, the tiles,
So can I just call on you all? Would that be okay? Because I'll just go with mine. Okay, so I'm going to go with Linda. What's your thinking?
Well, part of me says I need to look back at what the role of the school committee is. On the other hand, I think we have made decisions about MCAS before, whether we're going to have MCAS or not. I guess I would lean toward the school committee taking a role, but I'd be interested in hearing other perspectives.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks. And then Sherry?
I agree with Linda. I think that we've taken positions on things that didn't matter as much, and I think this one is a big one. I think that we should have a position. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think that I think we should have one.
All right. Laura?
This is a tough call for me. I have my own feelings about MCAS and its role and its effectiveness. I'm not sure if school committees, which are, I think, tasked to enforce state law and state regulations from DESE, if it's our under our purview to say when it's yes or when it's no. But I feel that if I'm thinking about the kids of this community and their impacts that they're feeling and so on and so forth, I think that we should take a stand. So regardless of whether or not it's in normal times are under our purview to do so, I think these extraordinary times necessitate some strong leadership. So I would say yes.
Okay, thank you. Krista?
The question is if we should take a stand.
Yes.
Right? And the stand would be like?
We don't know yet.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, no, we should definitely take a strong stand.
Okay, either way. Okay. All right. So I think, because I took off my sharing screen, I think it's back to Bob Imber.
Absolutely.
I think Deirdre. Oh, sorry, never mind.
And then Deirdre. Yes. Oh, he said yes. All right, and then Deirdre. I'm sorry.
I was kind of thinking a little bit along Linda's path to what was the precedent. Having this be my first year, I'm not really sure what the precedent is. I do understand the importance of unprecedented times we are in and such like that. But when the question was first posed, I was kind of thinking about, what precedent do we have to do that? And I'd kind of like a little more information around that. But as far as if it is in our preview, then I would say we should take a stand. So that sounds like a maybe.
Okay.
I'd like a little more information, I think.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you all. It seems like everyone's saying we should take some kind of stand, and now we have to figure out what that stand might be. So this will be, we'll keep this to 20 minutes because we could talk for 4 days or longer about this. So it's 7:13. We'll have discussion for no longer than till 7:33, where we can just talk about what would because if we decide that we want to suggest a position, we'll need to write a sentence or two before we leave. So we'll start with discussion about why would we want to support either not taking MCAS this year or taking MCAS this year. All right, Bob Imber.
Well, I don't really want to speak to that.
Oh.
I'm wondering whether the administration has any thoughts on this first.
Well, from my perspective, what I see when I'm in schools right now, I see a lot of very anxious teachers. And once we get to and that's just since October, right now, we started a little later, trying to work the kids into different things, reinventing how we're doing school. This will be the 3rd time coming up. Everybody's concerned on, I'm not going to be able to get where I need to be for MCAS. And pushing the kids harder, that's the last thing we want. The kids are feeling more stressed this year than ever before. They've had to figure out how to learn in different ways. So if I just look at it from the humanistic side of the house, I would be saying, no, I don't see there's any value added here other than adding more stress to everyone's plate. Now, if I look at it from the curriculum leaders side of the house, here's our curriculum, and we've already identified power standards, and in times of trouble, we all agreed we were going to cut back and just focus on these power standards and still be able to move students along. It does measure progress towards those power standards in its own way. So, I mean, I'm kind of split as well. I absolutely probably, if you said, Bob, so draw a line here, tell us one way or the other, I would lean towards the side of people are overwhelmed right now, and I just don't see how this is going to add any value. It's just going to add stress to everybody's life. I just do. The downside could be that some of the kids maybe that have not yet had it in high school, and maybe they didn't get it last year as a sophomore, and now they're juniors, and maybe for some families that aren't quite as well off as others, this might be an opportunity for a student who does well in school and then maybe isn't a poor family to get one of those scholarships for a state school. They're not great. There's not a huge amount of money, but it is some that's in there. The John and Abigail Adams scholarship that's in there. So, I mean, we are removing that if we didn't hold it, from everybody's plate. So that's out there as well. Brendan, did you want to add anything to that?
Just that I completely agree about anything we can do to decrease stress. And during a normal year, and this is not a normal year, MCAS is very stressful. I think that'll be compounded this year. And then I'd also add on to, I'd question what the value would be of the results for this year. Maybe this is not the year to be gathering that data. Maybe next year is better. So.
Okay, thank you. So Bob Imber, did you want to make a statement at this point, or should I go to Sherry and Linda?
You should go to everybody else. I'm just listening.
Okay, all right. So we'll go Sherry, then Linda.
My husband and I talked about this over dinner tonight, and he argued the point for, and I argued against, just to see where we were at. And I think that a lot of what I feel really comes down to that first statement in the counterposition on the paper we got. School districts are better served measuring student learning loss through use of local diagnostic assessments. To me, I don't really care where our district is this year. I care where, Johnny is in 2nd grade and he didn't learn how to read. I want to know that he's going to get the help that he needs. And I don't think that MCAS is the best way to make that happen. Now, I don't know that I have a better solution. But it seems like we should be using our time to figure out where these individual kids are and what they need over the summer or next year to make them whole.
Thank you. Linda?
So I'd like to know a little bit more about what local diagnostic assessments we have. And also, I'm comfortable with not having MCAS for the younger kids, but I do worry a little bit about the high school kids. Perhaps I misunderstand MCAS, but I thought that part of the reason for MCAS in high school anyway was to catch kids before they graduate, and have an opportunity to really try to bolster their skills, um, so that when they do graduate, they're ready enough. And maybe I don't understand MCAS enough. It's been on my list of things to try to dig into more, but I haven't done that. So I'd be interested in people's opinions about that. I don't want us to I don't want us to leave kids who are nearing graduation, and really need to bolster their skills, aside. I think we do need to focus on those kids, this challenging year notwithstanding. So if someone can convince me that we can do that without MCAS, then I guess my initial thought would be no MCAS for anybody except the high school kids, but I can also be talked out of doing it for the high school kids. If someone can convince me that there are reasonable assessments available locally or some alternative. So, and nothing against the high school teachers. I'm not trying to stress people out, but we got to catch those kids before they graduate if they need help.
Linda, I can speak to what assessments we have in play locally that could help us to sort of figure out where students at, and then maybe figure out a plan of attack on how to remediate students. We have STAR reading and STAR math in play, and that goes from grades K to 8. That measures grade level equivalency. It also measures what foundational skills that students don't have secured yet. So you can then set up a plan of attack on, well, we got to remediate on these foundational skills, and then we can move on to these other grade level skills, especially in math. For reading also, Lexia will give us some actionable information, and there is a part of Lexia that does allow us to assess student progress and to monitor student growth as well. So I would say that those tools we have in place, and we could certainly use those. In terms of the high school, we don't have those assessments available to us. I will say this, I'm not sure that the MCAS bar is necessarily all that high. My experience has been that each retake that a student does, so if you don't pass it in grade 10, when you retake it in either part, that you can take it twice within the grade 11, and then there's 2 windows in grade 12. It seems to get easier each year. Just in my purview of looking at it, it's not as difficult of a test, I think, the grade 11 or grade 12 test as the grade 10 test is, in my estimation. So I'm not quite sure if there's we have to have kids secure all this knowledge if you're going to be lowering the bar each year to try to get them across the horizon. The science test in the high school, the biology test, although some people find it very challenging, is not that difficult of a test. You have less than 50% of the questions you actually have to get correct. So, I mean, when you look at it in those terms, I'm not sure these are very high bars where the kid doesn't show they've mastered it, they're not going to be able to meet with success later in their careers or their lives. It's just a test, basically, in my estimation. But that's just me. Other people want to chime in here? Brendan, do you want to add anything?
Nope, you covered what I would have said there, Bob.
So, I mean, I assume, of course, for the high school kids, we have grades.
Yes, we do.
That tells us, at least is a meaningful indicator of how they're doing academically.
There is. For kids going to college, there's still the challenge of doing one of those high-level standardized tests, like SAT, for instance, so that you can get in there. For kids that will be taking AP courses, there are AP tests that are in there. And as Alicia has mentioned here, in the high school a few years back, they had to develop common assessments for every subject. So, like, for instance, Algebra 1, where there might be somewhere between maybe 6 or 9 different teachers teaching Algebra 1, it's a common assessment. So there's a common bar that everyone has to get over, and they all agree on what that's going to be. And those have been in play and been revised for several years now. So to me, that's a strength of the high school curriculum.
Okay, so there are common assessments that the kids take across classes.
Across subjects, yep.
Subjects, yes,
Yep.
yes. So that's helpful. Okay, all right. I think I'm on board then.
Okay. Let's see. So we've heard from Sherry and Linda. Laura, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, thank you. I would say that my assessment of my understanding of MCAS rigor is the same as Bob said. Over the years, the test it becomes a little bit easier and easier. So I'm not necessarily finding it to be a useful tool at doing what Linda had pointed out is can we catch these kids before they graduate? I think that we have other measures, like, for example, the local district assessments that can be more focused and timely. If we want these assessments to help us with summer programming and placement for next year, to provide focused interventions and supports to help these kids mitigate some of the effects of curriculum changes that have had to occur, I don't think MCAS is the way to do it. And I think that that we can do it in a much more effective way. And so for those reasons, I just find MCAS to be overall in a normal year, not a super effective assessment, and in a pandemic year, even less useful for us. So for those reasons, I would say that would be my position, is to forego MCAS this year.
All right. Thank you. Krista, would you like to add anything?
I agree with Laura. Pretty much everything that she said is accurate. It's a stressful situation, and it's not standardized testing is not accurate, as it does induce stress, and then people don't function very well or test very well when they're freaking out. Just the truth of it. So freaking our kids out and then giving them a test, we're not going to do very well in general. So I mean, if I could do anything, it would be taking them all away. But for this year, absolutely no, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you. Deirdre?
Yeah, so my questions were kind of back along the same lines to, if we don't do it, what do we have? And it sounds like there are some localized tests, and there's within the classrooms and such to help teachers help students, and that's really great, and that's really good to hear. And then there is my understanding is that there is some scholarships out there that students might lose opportunity for. Is there any other thing that will be missed? Any other ramification is what I'm thinking of if we do not do MCASs? And this is kind of to Bob, Burlow, and Brendan, I guess,
So
that you can think of.
Yep. People need to pass the MCAS to receive a competency determination in the high school. And so the state would have to waive that for this year. In other words, the seniors that are leaving would not have to have met the competency determination.
Right.
If they hadn't passed the MCAS, let's say as a sophomore, and then it wasn't given last year as a junior, and now it's not available as a senior, that state would have to waive that so that the seniors could still graduate and receive a regular diploma, not just a certificate of attendance, which is very different. And then that way they wouldn't be hindered at all in moving on to any pursuit after high school. So that would have to come from the state. That's nothing that we have local control of. But if enough, I would say, districts and school committees push back on this, and the state was going to do an about face, then that's what they'd have to take care of there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bob Imber, did you want to add anything? Because you started us off, and we're back to you.
No, I think I'm on board with everyone else, and I I think it's perfectly appropriate. We have in the past taken stands on numerous issues, including funding. I don't really think it's our job just to enforce what the state has said. We have local districts, and the local that structure is one of, at times can be one of advocacy, and at times can even be opposed to sort of state efforts. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, and that's normal. I think part of, if we come up with a statement, I think part of the statement could be that the state waive that structure in terms of those the financial grant that they give those students who do well. Having said that, I've had a daughter who did that and then went on to UMass, and the state plays these funky games. You get the tuition waiver, but the tuition's $1,400. Maybe now it's $1,800, and then you have fees of $24,000. So I mean, it's yes, there's a slight advantage, but it's pretty minimal, and really, I don't think it's part of any student's decision making about whether they're going to go to a state school, that they're going to get that small. There might be a tiny minority of students, but I think in general, when they're trying to make decisions about what school they go to, that's probably not playing a major role, because it's a tiny percentage of what their college bill will be. So, anyways, right. I think it's good for us to take a stance, and I worry about the teachers and the kids. I do think we should be using local metrics, and I think that should be part of any statement that we say that says we feel it's important for us to use localized metrics at this time, and we believe that it would be far more useful given the unusual circumstances of the past year and a half.
Okay, thank you. I also, just
Christina,
with this, oh, yes.
Before we move on, could we hear from you? I think I'd like to hear your point on all this.
You already heard my point the other night.
I did, but I think the group would appreciate hearing.
Okay, because we have 3 minutes before our time's up.
So you better hurry up.
I know. So I'm a little torn, because I have juniors. I have double juniors, twins, and they didn't take MCAS last year. And I'm not a big believer in MCAS, but I am in no way believing that our state legislature is going to put a moratorium on MCAS for longer than 1 year if they do 1 year. So that puts my kids, just personally, that means they have to do it next year. It's just another thing that we're kicking down the road for these children. But I also realize that when they return to school, which they cannot wait to do on the 26th fully, 5 days a week, it's the following week after that, or the week after, depending how we would give the test, that kids would be in testing. And that just is just infuriating that we get the kids back into school, and now we're going to make them sit and take hours of testing. And the stress that puts on an organization is incredible, especially, I don't know what it's like at an elementary or middle, but at a high school, like, everything stops and we have to rearrange the world. And it's just a really stressful time, as people have pointed out, without a pandemic. Now we have to worry about all of those things and contact tracing, etc. It's just a crazy drain on an organization. So personally, I want them to do it just to have it done, but professionally, and as a rational human being who is a human being who realizes the stress that this would cause, I think that this shouldn't happen. But I'm fully prepared for it to happen in a couple weeks, because I feel like it's going to happen. But we'll see. Maybe we'll be surprised. So thank you for asking for my opinion. I did start writing something when you were talking, and I'll put it on our agenda here based on what your statements were, and that way it gives us something to start with. So I'm going to do share now that I'm going to be a pro here. The tab, let's see if I get it. All right. So this is all I have right now, but
if you
we'll just
zoom
look at
in
it.
just a little.
Oh yes, that's right. See, I haven't hit that pro status yet. All right.
You're getting there. Perfect.
Okay. So what she said, regional school district school committee takes the position that for the 2020-21 school year, there should be a moratorium on MCAS testing. We feel this way for many reasons, including this is an atypical year with unprecedented stress and demands on students. Local common assessments can be utilized to measure learning loss and address student learning loss and target areas for growth. So this is not my best work, but I was typing as you were all talking. So is this a start? And if so, how do we make this amazing?
I think it's great. And I think I'd add a third bullet, which is the point that you raised, that maybe somebody can come up with the language, but kids are going to just get back to school with each other. And it'll be the first time they sort of have normalized school, or semi-normalized. And the fact that all of a sudden they're going to be thrust into testing for that, instead of being able to finally get together with their peers and their teachers, and it would be a tremendous disservice and completely would show utter disregard for the needs of the students and the school community.
And Bob, you just reminded me of another challenge of MCAS is our students that are remote. So we do have a lot of students who will remain remote possibly, and that is just another challenge that I wasn't really clear on management how that's handled, but it's just another big hurdle to get over.
Right. And I guess there's another point you raised, which is organizationally, the stress organizationally that would be created to get schools to be able to test effectively.
Yeah, I think the testing environment,
right,
to maintain fidelity in the testing environment is just not possible in a large organization. I was trying to help you, Bob. I'm sorry, I jumped over you.
No, it's good.
I wondered if we could wordsmith just a little tiny bit before we close.
Yeah,
so the last sentence in the first paragraph there, the introductory paragraph, I would say our rationale for this, instead of we feel this way for many reasons, including, I would say our rationale for this position is as follows, : and then under, where was it? Under local common assessments can be utilized. Whoa, okay, things keep happening, keeps moving around. Anyway.
It's happening, lady.
Okay, and address student, I would say, again, I'm just wordsmithing. Local common assessments can be utilized to measure learning loss and address student learning, to measure and address student learning loss instead of measure student, just measure and address student learning loss and target areas for growth. I think it works better. That's all.
And if we can add something about in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Or before next year.
Yes.
Right.
The English major in me just couldn't resist.
Jump in. That's the power of us all.
So in the last bullet, MCAS testing would be an undue burden on the schools organizationally.
Okay.
In order to schedule and administer.
Let's see.
It is my understanding that remote kids were going to have to come in person to take that test.
Yes, they have to. That's the state's mandate.
Right. Which means we're basically individually giving these tests because we can't ask them to go into a room with other people, other kids.
We can. We can.
We can.
Yes, we can.
No, that's not so good.
I don't. Can we take this off organizationally now, because we're saying to schedule and administer MCAS testing would be an undue burden on the schools,
particularly in such short notice.
Okay.
in,
Yep.
particularly in such a short time span.
Right, because we're doing tons of testing in this really condensed time.
Yep.
Is unrealistic.
Hold on, just want to change the font here. There we go.
Is ill-advised. Maybe is ill-advised. I don't know.
Educationally unsound.
Yeah, you could put that.
I mean, let's be honest, if a teacher or a group of teachers did such a thing for students, it would just be like unheard of.
Seems like in the third point where we talk about focusing on continued learning, somewhere listing that they're already so far behind, we don't want to take any more time away. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe put in mitigating learning loss during the pandemic. So focus should be on continued learning to mitigate learning loss during out of school learning models.
Two of us are typing. I'll stop.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, you go for it. We need Laura to repeat though.
I think we got it.
Okay. Continue learning to mitigate learning losses and not testing. Okay. The other thing that I didn't say in when Bob asked me my opinion was, and you guys may know this, but the Superintendents Association has sent in a position, and I think I saw like a group of administrators, like maybe the Massachusetts group of administrators have also sent in a statement against MCAS testing too. Do we need more? I mean, I feel like this is good.
I feel it's powerful. Sometimes less is more.
Fourth bullet, maybe to schedule and administer MCAS testing at this time would be an undue burden.
Is that too long, that bullet? Should we put that into 2?
I think it's good.
You're good? Okay. Okay.
It detracts from educating students is a little bit redundant to this bullet before, though. Maybe.
I feel like that's the part too that's kind of hanging.
Okay.
Maybe because we added the mitigate, we didn't have that before.
Like it.
So I guess we'll let it sit for like a minute while I talk, and then we'll go back to it. So I guess the way we would do this is would we, is this the way that we do it? We would say this is a motion we would like to make, and then we would then have it sent to our, I don't know, to all our legislators. Is that what we would do? And to the Commissioner of Education. So I don't know how to do this part of it. Bob Imber, I feel like you're into the advocacy component. What do you suggest? Or Bob Berlow?
Well, I think in the past we've sent it to our legislators, and I think and you could ask Daryl, because he would know exactly who this goes to. But it would also go to the Commissioner of Education and the Board of Education too.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking that last bullet needs to be completed. To schedule and administer MCAS testing at this time would be an undue burden on the schools, particularly maybe given the condensed time frame.
Can I suggest that we reorder? I don't really feel that, I feel like when you do bullets like this, your most important point should be the last bullet. And to make the scheduling and the inconvenience of it kind of being the last point, I don't think is our strongest point. I would almost put that first, because I feel like it is reality that we're addressing the fact that it's just ridiculously, hard. But I think that some of the other things are a little bit, when we talk about the student loss, maybe that would be our last point.
The local common
maybe
assessment, this one, make this the last.
I don't know what are other things that other people think are the most important one would be the last one. I think the atypical year could go first because I think that sets up that states the obvious maybe. Yeah, there we go. And then make that one the second one. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think the local common assessments one being last makes sense because it offers a solution.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I like that. Thank you, Sherry.
Maybe we want to finish the thought on the first bullet. This is an atypical year with unprecedented stress and demands on students. MCAS testing at this time would only add to this without much, with extremely limited benefit.
While providing little
benefit.
Bob Berlow, does this require the whereas comments, the whereas legal vocabulary that sets the stage for this kind of a statement, this kind of resolution?
No, I feel you guys can come out and you're making a statement. You're making, and as Bob said, you're advocating for something that as a group you believe in. I think when you make the motion, though, you're a subcommittee. So I think part of this motion needs to be you want to bring it to the full committee to do what? And then you can add in where you want it to go from the full committee. Bring it in front of the full committee to see if they support blah, 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 blah. And you can add that sort of in there with your motion.
Christina, on that first bullet, can we add into the providing little benefit, but the timeliness of it, that it's not helpful for what we're looking to do?
You want to jump in there and try to add some words, and then we'll see if we like it or not? You can type right in there.
Sure.
Kind of doing the top thing there. I'm going to steal some spaces so we can come back up onto one page here.
Maybe after Board of Education and Commissioner of Education.
I need a different word for reasonable, guys. It's not the right word. Useful, maybe.
Would it be before the end of the school year? Because don't MCAS scores not come out until they're embargoed and then we don't get them for a while? So could it be in the now somehow we get this information in the present? I mean, teachers would give these things and get this information and use it for placement and in a little, I don't know.
It could be an actionable timeline. Did you say an actionable timeline?
In a timely manner. Little benefit in a timely.
How about with little benefit to summer remediation and placement, next year's placement planning? Just put it right out there. What we would use this data for, they can't provide it.
Good point, Laura. That's the way to summarize it. Yep. It's really around the summer remediation as well as remediation next year. We don't get this until the fall, and by then you already need to set up next year's extended school day if we're going to have that in play. And MCAS just doesn't help us with any of that stuff at this point.
So I feel like we made our bullets sentences. So we should probably we made the first one a sentence, so we should make the other one sentences as well.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, right? To schedule and administer MCAS testing at this time would be an undue burden on the schools given the condensed time frame for administration or for testing or for something. I don't know what.
Just scheduling. Scheduling and in the beginning. Instead of get rid of the two. Just say scheduling and administering MCAS at this time.
Okay. Would be an undue burden on the schools given the condensed time frame, period. Okay.
Yep,
Right.
there you go.
Focus should be continuing learning losses and not testing. This is period.
Yeah.
When we do in-person learning, have we just excluded all the remote kids? Like, because they'll be returning. I guess the thing is they've been 5 day a week here. We're all doing 5 day a week, even in hybrid.
Hold on. It's actually called full in-person learning. That's what it's called. So
Full in-person learning. The focus should be on their continuing learning, not testing. Learning losses and not continuing learning.
Honestly, I'm not sure that the return to full in-person learning has much to do with it. The simple fact is that they need the time, no matter what method they're being taught.
And you might want to change, instead of continued learning, continued progress.
Sure.
Just because you're repeating learning twice.
All right. So take this, just say the focus. I hear what Sherry's saying, because we put this in because we were thinking about kids are coming back to school and we'd be testing them. But just the focus, our position really is the focus should be on learning and not testing right now, regardless of what mode kids are in. So can we just take all of that away and just say the focus of education should be, or something?
Of education right now. Do you want to use right now? You use those words.
The remainder of the year.
Sure, that's even better.
Should be on students continued, continued progress.
To me, it should be, here's where we could use learning, because we got rid of that other stuff. Should be on student learning and mitigation of losses, or remediation of losses, one or the other. Maybe it's remediation. And remediation, we don't even need losses in there.
You could probably get rid of and then just put a comma after remediation. Comma. Get rid of and. You don't need it.
There you go.
Like that? Okay.
Sure.
Okay. And then what's our last one looking like? Do we want local common assessments, or does that make sense? This local common assessment. Or should we just say our district common assessments can be utilized?
No, I think we're good with
okay.
I was going to say, we're saying can be. I mean, can we make a commitment that will be? Or is that too strong?
Shall be.
Shall be, will be, yeah. Because right here we're kind of saying, well, they could, but I think this is our action.
Well, maybe what we're trying to say is that these local assessments are better measures than the state one, rather than saying they can or they will. We're making a statement about the fact that these local assessments are better measures. That's really what it is. And
I hope that we're going to do them regardless if we have MCAS or not, quite honestly.
Oh, we are. Oh, we are. That's my serious face I put on with meetings with the principals. Yes, we're moving forward with those common assessments. Absolutely, we are. High school, as we heard earlier, had them in play years ago, and now they're really of value this year.
Maybe ought to be utilized to measure.
Sure. Sure.
Instead of will be, just ought to be. Yeah.
Well, Bob, I think I was trying to make a commitment with the will be, I don't know.
But that's kind of our decision internally. We'll take care of that. You guys are making a statement about that this is a better measure, so.
Okay.
All right. What do we think?
I think it's pretty powerful.
So moved.
All right. We probably should take a motion. All right. Let's do that, Bob Ember. We will take, I'll take a motion to bring this to the full committee to see if they support sending this to our legislators, the Board of Education, and the Commissioner of Education, and anyone else that our leadership team says, hey, send it to these people. That would work. Thank you.
So Christina, just a question in terms of process.
Yeah.
Is it going to go back to management first, or okay? Thanks.
Yeah, because for time, we'll send it we'll bring it to our March 29th meeting, Monday's meeting. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So I saw in something that Mike sent to us, he said like March 29th or that later date, April meeting, but we want to get it to the March 29th one so it can get sent off. Otherwise it might not go anywhere. So we wanted to get to people's hands.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I heard Bob say he'll make the motion. Who's going to second that? Laura does? Okay.
Second.
All right. And can we do the thing that Mike uses with the, what does he call it? The unanimous consent? I don't know if it's a real thing.
There, lady. This is
all right. I'm like, is it a real thing? Is it a real thing? All right. So I'll take a roll call. So all those in favor, or we're voting on that motion. Sorry. Voting on the motion. Thought I was in a different meeting for a minute. So we'll go around. So Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Imber?
Member, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Long-Balil?
Long-Balil, yes.
And Member Shapiro?
Shapiro, yes.
And I also vote yes. So that's unanimous. So we'll bring that forward to our 29th. So should I just send that? How should I get that? I don't know how to get that on the agenda.
I will work with Randy Jacob to get it on the agenda.
Okay.
Yep.
So I don't have to worry about it. We'll just see it appear there Friday
Yep.
when we get our stuff. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Just making sure. And so we're at 7:55, 5 minutes before our end. And I imagine we don't want to get started on a policy at this time. I'm thinking I don't want to. I think it would probably be appropriate to have a motion to adjourn if that's okay with everyone. Someone wants to make that motion. All right. All right. And we have a second. So again, we'll do roll call vote. Thank you all for your work tonight too. Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Imber?
Imber, no. No, just kidding. Yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Long-Balil?
Long-Balil, yes.
Member Shapiro?
Shapiro, yes.
And I also vote yes. So we are adjourned at 7:56. Thank you all for your hard work tonight. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thanks.